What's up, y'all? Chris Rimble here. This is lesson number 3. Today we are going to be talking about getting more hands-on with artificial intelligence and kind of the interesting places to do that, some of the tools that you'll need to use, and a look at some of the communities that are already doing hands-on stuff with some of the powerful generative AI models and also with large language models. And we'll see how large language models are enabling new forms of creativity within the hands-on world. So let's talk about what that hands-on world is called. It's the open source community. And with software, what open source means is that it's people that share the code for their projects. And normally they do it for free. So if somebody wants to use their code and make cool new stuff with it, the person who is the open source coder likes that, because that means that their project is being used to make awesome new things that they never would have thought of doing themselves. And thus the project builds and grows, takes on a life of its own when it's open source, in a way that it won't if you just keep it all to yourself or just try to put it behind a paywall. So we are on the homepage of HuggingFace here. HuggingFace is a community of people that are building things with AI. And a lot of these things that they make are open source. I've seen some really cool things come from HuggingFace. It's kind of a cute name for a company / project. Here are some of the organizations using their models. They've got Meta, they've got Google, they've got Microsoft, Intel. Lots of well-known companies are using their models, which is to say their AI code. So there are lots of things, lots of tools within the HuggingFace community here. If you have a project that needs to hear with audio and either classify it or turn it into text, they have things for that, and all these other things you can see here as well. This is a really cool place to explore. So if you're interested in working with AI, HuggingFace.co is a really excellent place to start. I'm going to click on their models button up here, and this will just show you some of the things that they have available. If you're a nerd like me, this is awesome. You see all these different cool things happening, even just under natural language processing. They have text classification, table question answering, zero-shot classification, which zero-shot, that just means it gets it right on the first try. It doesn't need any training. It's one of the holy grails in AI, is to get something to do zero-shot, first try work. This is the place to come when you've found how AI works, you want to dive into it, and you want to learn a little bit. And don't worry, if this is over your head, if this looks like crazy stuff here that you have no hope of learning how to use, don't worry. That's how it mostly looks to me too. And I've been in AI since I think like 2018 is when I started studying code and AI and starting to learn it a little bit. So most of the time you'll notice when you're learning code stuff, when you're learning AI stuff, it's going to really help you to just look up things that you don't know, and you'll be you'll be surprised how much you can learn through Googling and trying things, and of course using ChatGPT to teach you stuff, which we're going to look at that today as well. So this is HuggingFace. Definitely check them out. Get to know what's in the HuggingFace community, and we're going to next take a look at their GitHub, which if you recall from my free classes, GitHub is the place to store your code. You can actually write your Python code or whatever code language you use and store it in GitHub, and it's a place that people can come to and grab your code base and work on it themselves in their own coding environment, which I'm going to show you some coding environments that I use as well. So if you want to see what's available here on the HuggingFace GitHub, Transformers is one of their most popular ones, as is just data sets, which is something you can use to train an AI model. So we'll go in here, we'll briefly, you don't have to understand what we're looking at here. we'll briefly look at what they have available here. This is AI for working with text or with images and with audio as well. So this is transformers. It's an architecture of artificial intelligence. It's what we talked about in our deep dive in the LLM class. This is a transformer architecture. And I would recommend exploring their GitHub, which is github.com/HuggingFace. And then if you want to look at the transformers, you can click on that. But this is where the actual code lives to create AI models. And you can clone this to your own machine. And you can do these things for free. This is not something you have to pay to do. I have not paid to use the coding environments that I use when I'm learning how to build with AI. So this is something that is very, very open source, very free, something you can just dive right into. However, I am most excited about today demonstrating two things. One, how LLMs, again, large language models, are used in other forms of artificial intelligence and are used as kind of the backbone for building AI projects. And two, I want to show you where to go to actually start to write and learn code on your own. I'm not here to teach you artificial intelligence code. That would be a class that would last years, and I personally am still a student myself. I've built some AI models, yes. I have written my own code. I've created my own projects with Raspberry Pi, but I'm still learning, and I'm very good at learning, and I want to show you where to go if you want to learn along with me how to write code for AI. So we'll look at that at the end of this lesson, but first I want to show you something that they did over at HuggingFace. This is an open source model. This is something that they have a lot of the code already released for, and we'll look at that. But this is an example of using LLMs to actually be the background, the backbone for building a bigger, more general purpose artificial intelligence model. So let's zoom out a little bit here. When you think about what it used to take to build an artificial intelligence program, it was a lot of just writing code. That was what worked for creating artificial intelligence. Now, we can actually use a new kind of code, and that is just English language text. So the big deal here with HuggingGPT and what they're doing with some of the pre-existing HuggingFace tools that were built the old way, just written with code, right, is they're using the GPT, which is the large language model, which speaks in English, to connect these things together into something that is an entirely new tool. So yes, it's important to learn Python code because you need to know it to assemble your own things manually. But you can do so much now knowing little to no Python code, and even just like the basics, learning that in a week. If you can just learn the basics of Python in a few days, you will have what you need to actually work with artificial intelligence. And that's what they did with this HuggingGPT here. What they did is they actually used the LLM to talk to the already pre-existing AI models. So they wanted to build something that could actually describe what it sees in an image. And they used a few different models. Remember over here on HuggingFace, we saw some different model types here, like image classification, object detection, question answering, summarization. They took some of these models here, connected them using ChatGPT, and made an entirely new tool with, this is the ChatGPT, as the thing that connects it all together. This is an amazing new kind of architecture that allows you to be very, very creative with building new things with artificial intelligence. And the code for doing this, they're actually publishing it and making it open source. So we will be able to play with this if we want to, and I'm going to show you where on the internet you can go to actually work with using an LLM like ChatGPT to pull together the existing AI models out there. HuggingFace is one of the best places to get them, and make entirely new inventions that have almost sci-fi powers. So that was one example, and I will include this link in the resources for this class, because I would certainly encourage you skimming through it. And even if you don't understand everything, reading the things that you do understand, don't let all this technical language intimidate you. So this here was an example of, we want to take this image here, and again, this was different models worked together with ChatGPT to speak to them all in the language that they need to speak to be given the instructions to do what they need to do to create the end result. And we don't need to know how to talk to each of the code ourselves. ChatGPT takes care of it because it speaks in code. So what they said is, hey, I want to take this picture and I want to recreate a new image in the same pose as this picture, but instead of a boy riding on a scooter here, we want it to be a girl sitting on a bed reading a book. So what the image, what HuggingGPT did is it used an image recognition tool to identify the pose of the person in this picture here. Like, it found what pose they had, and then used a different image generating AI to generate an image with this as the baseline for the pose of the person and the instructions, a girl sitting on a bed reading a book. So it's essentially the same pose as this right here. So this had to use several different tools, but all the user did was say, hey, here's this image. I want you to create a new image with this description of this, with the person in the same pose as this image here. And it sounds kind of simple, like why would that be something that's useful? It's more like a tech demo. It's more like a demonstration of a capability. Like, this isn't super useful in the real world as experimented, but there are other things you could imagine it for, such as you want to create a certain kind of art, or maybe you're creating a movie and you need to make a scene look a certain way. There's all kinds of reasons that you might need to use this kind of technology, and this is just a demo. This is like when they sent some astronauts to the moon, and the astronauts walked around on the surface of the moon and then came back. That didn't really accomplish a lot as far as just like walking around in a new place, but what it did was it created the groundwork, and it proved that it could be done, and we can build upon that in the future, and the technology used to do that can be used for all kinds of things. So that's what's going on here. It's kind of a moon landing moment. This is a very mind-blowing thing in the world of AI that has happened just this year. There are some other cool examples in here where they wanted to take a picture of a basketball dunk here and use that same pose, but with a new image description. This is something that, again, I'm going to put in the description or in the resources so that you can actually explore it yourself, because we're only kind of in the shallow end of how powerful this is. But in summary, this is using ChatGPT to grab these different kinds of artificial intelligence models, which that's just a code base, these different artificial intelligence code bases here, using ChatGPT to coordinate between them and choose which one to use based on what you tell the GPT front end. So you tell it, again, you're using natural English language as your code, as the code that you're giving the machine. You're talking to the machine in English, which is a new ability with AI, and ChatGPT made this possible. And then ChatGPT is then understanding what it needs to do to accomplish what you ask it to do, and it will choose the different tools to use to do it. And that brings up another point. When they built GPT-4, remember when I told you in the LLM deep dive lesson 1, how there were these emergent behaviors. And what an emergent behavior is with an LLM, large language model AI, is it has a new ability that it was not designed to do. It has a new ability that surprises the engineers that built it. It's like if you taught someone how to play guitar and they also learned how to sing in the process and you didn't teach them that. But even more insane that this is coming out of a computer. Well, something about GPT-4 that is one of its emergent behaviors is that it can learn to use tools very, very, very rapidly. And tools include code bases. Tools include AI tools where it is able to actually look at the code, look at the way that the audio classifier is built, look at the way the image classifier is built, or whatever it is, and say, I need to learn what's in this image. I'm going to grab this piece of code, learn how it works, and then use that to learn what's in this image. That is an emergent behavior of GPT. It's like, hey, I need to hammer in this nail, and I've never used a hammer before. I'm going to pick up this hammer, and oh, it's heavy and flat on this end up here. I can use that to hammer this nail into the wall. GPT is able to do this with all kinds of tools, and that is why the Hugging GPT research paper here worked, is because it is able to figure out how to use the models that are hosted over here on Hugging GPT on its own. It doesn't need to be told how to do it, which is the biggest breakthrough, is that it can intuitively learn how to use the AI models. So that is a look at HuggingFace and Hugging GPT. They are going to be posting the code for this, and they already have posted some of the code. So you can actually click on this code here, and you can download it. And it's incomplete so far, but it does work. They're still working on it though. That's the nature of open source projects, is they're often still in progress for a long time. So you'll get versions of it that are pretty good, and then better, and then better, and then better, and then better. And there's not necessarily a full version release for a long time. But you can go in here and go to their GitHub, which again is where you can host code. And it tells you actually your system requirements, what you need on your computer for this to work. It tells you how to set it up, and it gives you instructions on how to configure it and run it. Now this is going to require a fairly powerful computer to be able to do, and it runs best on a version of Linux, which is it's like the nerdiest operating system. There's Windows, there's Mac OS, and then there's Linux. And some of you will have heard of Linux before, but I would guess that most of you haven't. Linux is an operating system on your computer that is just especially good for creating and running Python code. So this is instructions for setting up Hugging GPT, and right now, I mean, you have to learn how to use code a little bit, or at least be able to follow these directions that are very complex. And your computer has to be a certain kind of computer, and it's kind of time consuming. You have to learn how to do this stuff. It's kind of for the nerds right now. But this kind of thing is so powerful that this will inevitably become an app that you just install on your phone in the future. This kind of thing is so incredible that it doesn't live forever in the form of something that's you have to like manually put together, right? So my guess is that on our iPhones, we will have a next generation version of Siri that will be able to do this thing. It will be able to use a large language model to go look for the tools that it needs to accomplish your request, grab those tools, pick them up, use them, complete your request, send it back to the large language model, which will then communicate back to you the answer. It'll be so much more powerful than the voice assistants that are on phones right now, and they will work very much similar to Hugging GPT, also known as Jarvis. I think there are some Marvel fans over there, some Iron Man fans. I think Iron Man is probably one of the coolest Marvel superheroes. But this is this is like Jarvis. Like you talk to it, it goes and figures out how to accomplish it, and then it tells you, it comes back with you with its chores done. So that is, again, HuggingFace, HuggingGPT/Jarvis. I will put these links in the resources so that you can go in and learn about this and go as far as you can with figuring out how to use this yourself. Some of you will be able to set this up. Some of you actually will be able to get Jarvis running on your machine. And when you do, send me an email and tell me about it. I want to hear your thoughts on it and what you think about using this tool. It's very hard to set up, but again, some of you probably will succeed in doing this. All right, so I wanted to show you something else as well. This is called Auto-GPT. This is another tool which it just basically lives inside of your folders. So this just lives inside of like the user/documents. Like you go into the folders of your computer and it just lives in there. And you have to open up a command line interface here, which is known as a terminal or a shell. And this is an open source project. It's Auto-GPT. And what it does is it uses the LLM that ChatGPT runs on. It uses GPT-4 to do various tasks, including browsing the internet and coming up with goals of its own. Sometimes it will even write little code programs to help it do its job, but this is what it looks like when you use it. So first you name it. I named this one Weather GPT. And then you tell it what its goal is. I tell it its goal is to find out the forecast for the next week for the places requested by the user. And then you can give it up to 5 goals. And these are fairly pedestrian goals. You can give it more difficult or more complicated goals if you want to, but I find that Auto-GPT kind of breaks down when you try to make it do something too hard. So I gave it the goal to find the forecast in Nashville, Kona, Anchorage, and London, and then shut down. You definitely want the last goal to be shut down. Otherwise, it will have an existential crisis. So now it's going to run. And the main reason that Auto-GPT and some other open source GPT experiments work is they do something called reflection. And what reflection is when GPT asks itself, "Are you sure?" So this actually, taking this approach actually increases its accuracy quite a lot. We're talking like from 70% accuracy to over 90% accuracy. And you might have heard of GPT-4 being able to successfully take law exams, medical exams, and other entrance or completion exams in like really difficult professional fields and to pass them with 90s and above. And one of the ways that they get it to do that is they get it to ask itself, "Are you sure?" before providing an answer. And often, if you ask GPT, "Are you sure?" it will correct a wrong answer to a right answer. And if it is right already, it will say, yes, it's right. So that is that reflection. It's very interesting that it makes it more accurate. And it's kind of human in that way, right? So if we were to stop and think, wait, am I sure about this? We would probably make fewer mistakes. Same is true with GPT. So now Auto-GPT here is asking for permission to run, and I'm going to tell it yes with the letter Y. And I'm going to tell it can run 20 cycles. And we'll see what a cycle is here in a second. So it's thinking to itself, I need to Google these places and find out the weather forecasts for them. And I'm going to look up different places. So I'm going to start with weather.com. I'm going to use AccuWeather. I'm going to use News Channel 15. I'm going to get, and of course, weather.gov. That's probably the best one. I'm going to use these places to find the forecast. I did not tell it to do this. This is GPT itself figuring out how to accomplish the goals that I gave it. And sometimes it's slow, sometimes it thinks for quite a while. Again, Auto-GPT is cool in concept. It's pretty awesome in what it can do, but it can be a little bit slow. So you notice this criticism line. Sometimes it talks about trying to like fix the code input, but often the criticism is the reflection part of GPT. So it's literally thinking to itself here. So it thinks, I found several links to websites with weather forecasts, and it's saying the next step is to extract the data from the website. And so its plan is to go to a website, extract the table with these two different tools. These are tools in code that can pull data from websites. It's called Beautiful Soup and Pandas. Those are something for pulling data from the internet and for creating tables, respectively, like data tables. So now it's doing these things. It's finding tools, it's using them kind of like HuggingGPT would do, and now it's summarizing the data that it pulled from the internet. And we'll let it work on this for a while. It's something that you kind of want to set up and then let run in the background, and then you come back and check if it did anything useful. We will come back to it. I won't make you sit and watch it. So now I want to show you, let's see where my Google Chrome went here. I want to show you how to use ChatGPT to learn the basics of Python. And I had a prompt ready to go for you, but I'm just going to type it in again so you can see what it was that I was doing. So I'm using GPT-4 here. Remember I said that learning Python, at least the basics of it, would help you with these things. Well, that's still true here in 2023. I don't think it'll necessarily be true forever. So I'm going to tell GPT-4 what I want to do. I will say, I want to learn the basics of Python in 7 days. Please outline a course for including activities to help me do this. And this is something that I do when I want to learn things, like speed reading is something that I want to get good at. And so this is, I also sometimes can use a Python refresher. This is really good for learning. And especially if you are homeschooled and you need to learn things, this is something that you can do to gain skills very, very rapidly. This is also helpful if you are an entrepreneur or in business for yourself or learning any kind of complex thing. You can have ChatGPT actually outline a course for you to help you do this. And I'm going to show you while it's doing this, we'll come back to this. I'm going to show you a couple of things you can do. You might be thinking, cool, great, I need to know where to go to actually put in code. Like, cool, I can learn to write code, but where do I do it? There's a couple of places. I'll show you this one. Click on try. This is called Jupyter, and Jupyter is all about Python notebooks. And a notebook is just a place to, I'll turn off my dark mode here. It's just a place to learn to run code. Lots of places that do education for learning to like do data science and stuff, they'll use Jupyter notebooks. But it's a place to include instructions, like see this place has instructions and code. So we're going to run this code here, and this is just like a place to run code. So you can type in Python. This here is Python, and then you can run it. I'm going to also show you the one that I use. I'm not as familiar with Jupyter other than some of the courses I've taken, they've used it, but I'm going to show you the one that I use. It's also free. It's called Colab, Google Colab. We're going to go to Welcome to Colab here, which is their first page, but this is where I keep my Python projects and my AI projects. You can actually go in here and type Python into like a little code box. So we'll click plus code here, and then this is the code box that it created here. I'm going to do print, and then I'm going to say hello world, which is the classic, and then I'm going to run it. And then it just says hello world. That's the output there. But that's the simplest thing that you can write in Python, or one of the simplest things. And this is just a place to learn, and it's a playground where you can learn how to run Python. So this code here makes this visualization here that you can make graphs of data, and it will teach you how to do machine learning, which is another word for artificial intelligence. And the coolest thing about Google Colab is that you see this box up here. This allows you to use the compute resources of Google, of their data centers, and you can use it for free. Like, they'll let you use a certain amount for free, and the amount they give you for free is actually quite a lot. So you don't have to have a super powerful computer to run artificial intelligence code. You can actually just go into colab.research.google.com, and it will show you, it will give you access to powerful cloud computing. So these are GPUs and even TPUs, which are tensor processing units, in the cloud. So it's in this big building that has a bunch of machinery in it to run supercomputers, and they let you run a little slice of the supercomputer in there for free on here. So that's where to go. Now let's go back to our ChatGPT session here, where we want to learn some Python. And you notice how it gave us an outline here. Well, this is cool, but it's not going to teach us anything just as an outline. So this is a practice I call zooming in. When you're learning something on Python, I tell it to give me an outline, and then I zoom in. So what I'm going to do now to make this more practical is, okay, give me the full curriculum with activities for day 1. So now, this is where you actually start to learn things. This is where you can have ChatGPT literally teach you whatever you want. And you will use this for Python, sure. You'll use it to learn how to write some code, but you can also use it for any other subject or any other topic, where you can zoom in and get more and more detail until you have as much detail as you need to do it. So I'm going to say, this is pretty easy here. Learn about Python, its history, features, applications, and advantages. That's pretty easy. I'll tell it to elaborate on part 1 of day 1. But I want to show you that it will actually give you code. It will actually give you code that you can then take over to your Colaboratory notebook and click on plus code, and then paste in the code that ChatGPT gives you to learn. So it's giving us Python's history here. This is something that is cool to learn. It's important stuff to learn, but we want to see some code. So I'm just going to click on stop. Now I'm going to say, let's do part 3. So for part 3 of day 1, please provide the code to learn these topics. This is awesome. So now it's giving us code here, right? It's saying that indentation is how you make this piece of code run before this, and this piece of code runs inside of this part to here. And you can learn hands-on what things are. And if you don't understand something, you can ask it. It's like a teacher. What do you mean by indentation? And it's going to tell you that it means this part here is a little bit further in from the left side. It's a little bit further to the right from the left side than the top. That's what indentation means, and you can do it with the tab key. So let's grab this piece of code, You just literally click copy code, couldn't be easier. Go over here to Colab, and we have our new code box here, and we're just going to paste it in here, and we're going to run it. So here's the list of Python keywords. ChatGPT told us about this, that we could go help, and then quotations and parentheses keywords, and these are the different things that are like Pythonic words to make code run. Elif means else if, and lambda is actually its own little code within Python, and this is try is a way to make your code a little bit more flexible to see if something works, and then again, if it doesn't, where's else? So if something doesn't work, then do some other code. But it will teach you how to do this. It will teach you the basics of Python by zooming in and by getting the outline first and then asking it to elaborate on each part of that outline. This is how I learned to make all kinds of stuff with Python code. It's how I learned to train AI models, simple ones that I can run inside of Google Colab. It's how I just hands-on learn Python. I think it's one of the best ways to learn it. So I have taken an online course for Python. I have watched like 6-hour YouTube videos with hands-on demos, and those are great too. I would say the 4 to 6 hour YouTube video that teaches you how to learn Python, that's pretty good. But this is one of the best things I've ever seen is learning it with ChatGPT. But again, ChatGPT itself, this changed the game. This made it possible to use English language instead of writing this very precise and complex, at least compared to English language, but not compared to most computer code, this precise and complex way to tell computers how to do stuff known as Python. Python's very simple compared to most computer code, and it's also very well known, and you can do lots of cool stuff with it, but you still have to kind of learn how to use it. And the fact that you can now use English language to tell GPT to go find tools that are built with Python to accomplish the task that you want it to, that's the new kind of coding. That's the new kind of app building. Once you become pretty experienced in Python, yes, you might build new tools for GPT to use for you, but now with HuggingFace and with HuggingGPT being an example, then we're in a whole new world where we assemble stuff with the English language. But let's go back here and look at how Auto-GPT is doing with finding our forecast. It would have been way easier to just look this stuff up with a search engine like Google, but Auto-GPT here has its own ideas of how to do things. It literally wrote some Python code called fixweathercode.py to help it learn how to do, to help it grab the forecast and provide it for me. So it's writing its own code to try to get something simple done. Eventually, this will be much more powerful, much more intelligent, much more useful, but it's cool to see it thinking and writing its own code and self-criticizing to get these things done. And it's still working. It's still trying to get this stuff done. Weather data is a fairly complex question for Auto-GPT for some reason. I've tried doing other weather-related stuff with it too, just because I'm kind of a weather nerd, but it is taking the long way around, writing its own code, and not just like Googling like what the forecast is for these cities and sending me a summary of the web page, which is what it could do. Instead, it's just trying to parse a ton of data. All right, so that brings us to the end of this lesson. It was a little bit longer, about 40 minutes instead of 30 minutes. Thanks for sticking with me. This is one of the things that makes me most excited about the world of artificial intelligence, and that's the open source projects out there where you can go and get the code and run it on your own machine or run it in the Colaboratory notebook or the Jupyter notebook. You can grab the code and customize it yourself, learn how to use it, and recreate the experiments like HuggingGPT and try things of your own with it try Auto-GPT and get it to do things for you and see where its weaknesses and strengths are. And understand that this is the future of computing. It's using LLMs, large language models, as the go-between between the human and the complex things that have to happen to get what they want done. So this is an area of extremely rapid development. By the time you watch this, there might be better tools actually available. So I will keep this lesson up to date. This is one that I'll probably have to re-record every few months. But just know, these open source models, these hands-on things you can do with AI, this is where it's really the most fun. Yes, it's fun to chat with ChatGPT. Yes, you can learn cool things with it. Yes, it's fun to generate images with Midjourney. But getting hands-on with the code, even if you don't know anything about it, just following the directions to run it and learning some Python yourself, this is where you can start to create your own career or project or art with artificial intelligence and just take this to the next level. I'm having a lot of fun doing it, and I've made some really fun stuff with it. So for your homework, I want you to go and get a Colab account in Google. And I want you to also go into ChatGPT and have it start to teach you the basics of Python. And make sure to ask for code examples, code exercises. It's actually very good and creative at creating them. And so you can actually copy the code into your Colab notebook here. So to complete the homework, all you have to do is create a Colab notebook and do the print hello world and then click play and it will say hello world back to you. That's the homework you have to at least do, because when you do that, you have written a line of code, sent it to the computer, and the computer sends you back what the result of that code is. And yes, it's extremely basic. Yes, it just says hello world, but you can get it to do all kinds of other awesome stuff too. And I will leave that exploration journey to you. Thank you so much for coming to this lesson. I will see you in the next one. I'm Chris Rimbolt. I love you all, and I just love talking about this stuff. I'll see you in the homework and in the next lesson. Peace.